Welcome to Truth in Lending, America's bestest, most super duper mortgage and real estate news podcast. Super duper. There's more smoke in the studio, and this time it's not my fault, you guys. We have insurance agent Karmen Warner of Davidson Insurance Agency in the office to discuss all things fire protection and insurance. It is really smoky in here. It's kind of hard to breathe. Plus, Greg's on fire.
It's a hot day.
Today is September 6th, 2023, and this is Truth in Lending.
We're burning one down.
Yeah, you know, I thought about that title, and I was like, people are going to think this is a pot podcast.
Jeez. Yeah.
It's not.
It's not about that.
It's not about that.
We're not hot boxing. It's just smoky.
Yeah.
Very smoky.
So, Greg, lead the way.
Yeah, today we have Karmen Warner here.
Yeah, hello.
And we're going to be talking about fire insurance and what's going on. You know, a couple quick facts about fires. In Oregon, we're currently #1 in active wildfires in the U.S. with 15 wildfires going right now. Top that, California.
I mean, I don't know that that's a first place ribbon that I want.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
No, probably not.
But here we are.
Yeah. And, you know, on a 10-year average, this is national. There are 40,221 wildfires with a total of 2,089,674 acres that are burned every year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so crazy.
Pretty crazy.
But in the smokiest year of all,
the smokiest year of all, 2020,
ooh,
we had 10,100,000 acres burned.
2020
That's a
was
lot.
such an awful year.
It was terrible.
I
Oh
mean,
my gosh. I remember just waking up to the apocalypse of like the orangeness.
and then there was also this little bug that was floating around too that made everybody
I forgot
go
about
indoors and hide for a few years. Wow.
The
Yeah.
vid.
So Karmen, tell us who you are and what your background is. Are you qualified to be on the show?
Sure, yeah. I'd like to think so. but I'm going to fake it really well if not.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
my name is Karmen.
We love faking it.
Yeah. Fake it till we make it, right? That seems like 2020 and on. No. So, yeah, my name is Karmen. I, been in the insurance industry for almost 10 years. I work for an agency out of Vancouver, Washington, and that's our HQ there. But we do represent over 37 different states across the United States. And I represent the outside sales of Central Oregon. And so I really focus on agricultural insurance and rural insurance, which, hello, Central Oregon, and what we know it as, and hello, fire mapping and scoring and protection classes and all the things surrounding fire. It couldn't have been an easier topic to kind of discuss, and honestly, more relevant topic to discuss here in Central Oregon. I've been in the industry, like I said, for almost 10 years on the independent side. And so what that means is we're brokerages. So we can offer more than one product. And so whereas like if you were a State Farm agent and you can offer State Farm's product, we can offer, we have access to unlimited markets. And that gives us several different options. We write only A-rated carriers. Or better. And then what we do is, if there's a market that we can't find, we'll go out to a surplus lines and find it. And so we really can give our clients a great picture of what is in the market and what the best rating is. And then also we have the options that are going to be available. So
Now this isn't a bash State Farm show, but to bring it up, right, as far as what's going on with fire insurance companies right now, they said they're getting out of California.
Yep, they stopped.
Right?
It was just this last month. Yeah, in August it was just this article that popped up, and they're pulling out of California. They're pulling out of parts of Texas, Florida. A lot of carriers are because they just can't remain solvent if they continue in those areas. And there's something called it's called claims reserve, and so a reserve. In claims, there's policy reserves and claims reserves. So policy reserves are the dollar amounts that carriers will put aside for potential future claims that they anticipate to happen. So think forecasting and lending, trends in real estate, same thing. They're putting those aside knowing that, okay, projected based off of historical data. This is what we should put aside, knowing that we have X amount of policyholders for claims. Claims reserve is the amount that's allotted once the claim is started and filed. Now, what's happened with, for example, State Farm is $2 billion losses at the end of a fiscal year because they don't have enough claims reserve, or they can't access enough claims reserve because they don't have the funds. And so it's not just State Farm, so not to just bash State Farm, but it is so many carriers right now, and we're seeing ratings go down due to the fact that they're not profitable at any given end of any fiscal year. So
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So this feels like a dumb question, but there's your homeowner's insurance, and then is fire insurance like a separate rider? Is it a separate company that pays in and kind of backs it?
Yeah.
That you bundle in? How does that work?
that's a great question, Katie, and it's not a dumb one. I get that a lot. One of the questions that I get most commonly is, so will my policy cover fire? And yes, the answer is yes, most commonly. So most agents are going to write what's called an all peril policy, that peril meaning loss type. If you get an agent that is getting you a drastically low rate, maybe ask some questions that is just way off from any other market. However, all peril policies, yes, they're going to cover fire. Wildfire insurance is not any different than fire insurance. It is just fire insurance. So your homeowner's insurance will cover it. Now there's caveats to that. And there's underwriting guidelines. So you can lie on an application all day long, but it won't do you any good because once they see...
we know.
and most of these carriers, they're doing what's called a property inspection. And post-COVID, which, COVID did evolve, I would say, definitely technology for a lot of these carriers, forcefully so. They were forced to have to figure it out. But they couldn't go on site and do the knock on the door, meet the customer, and walk the property any longer with COVID. So they started doing drone and using technology and satellite images, Google Maps, things like that to identify risk and defendable space of wildfires. So one of the largest factors that plays into fire insurance and whether or not a carrier will write the policy is how far are they? What is the defendable space from the home or the structure we're insuring to brush, right? And the other thing is the access on the main roads. Can a fire department, can law enforcement, can they get down a driveway at any given time and throughout 365 days of the year, so all seasons. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that play big factors on fire insurance.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I think that answered most of the questions.
No. I promise. There's more.
Just kidding. So, you specialize in Oregon. So can you talk a little bit about what the wildfire risk map and what happened there?
The controversial wildfire risk map.
I think I was sitting at the Podski with Vanessa, and she made a comment, and she was like, what's up with the fire mapping? And I heard it just went away or something like that. And then I'd heard it several other times, like, oh, that doesn't exist anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, yes, it exists, but everyone was right to an extent. So what happened was Oregon released a wildfire map, and it was based off of, I think it's 1.8 million tax properties in Oregon. So, and it was per property. So my property was assessed, your property was assessed, and not obsessed, assessed or possessed, but it was assessed, and it was given a score, right? And so, or a zone, think flood mapping, right?
Yeah.
With FINRA. And so they came out, and it obviously made, Central Oregonians pretty proud of their properties. They're like, heck no, like, this is going to affect my insurance. Absolutely not am I giving, ammunition for these property and hazard insurance carriers to be able to say, no, I don't want your property. I don't want to insure it because I'm in the red zone, on Oregon's new map. Well, with all of the controversy of it, they decided this came out early summer of 2022. By September, they'd retracted it. And then
Well, it was essentially like redlining, right? You're like, okay,
Correct.
these houses are going to be way more expensive, and these houses are going to be less expensive, but they're next door to each other. There wasn't much.
correct. And that's where they weren't taking into consideration things like that defendable space, things like, oh, I have a water suppression system, or hey, I've got all of these different things I put on my property. None of that was relevant to the map, or taken into consideration. And so it was retracted. They said, okay, we're going to spend a couple years figuring out like how we would remake and redesign this map using,
And maybe not draw in crayon.
Yeah. it all
bold.
started when 6-year-old Gracie sitting at no, just
These ones
decided
will
to
look more
color up pretty.
dangerous.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
So that's when State Bill 82. And so if you look up SB 82, you will see that state bill was passed. And what it does is it basically, one, it contradicts exactly what that flood mapping or the fire mapping was doing. And it allows more accurate data to be used in the future, but then it also restricts insurance carriers from being able to use fire mapping as a reason to non-renew, deny coverage. So when a lot of agents have asked me, oh, I heard that fire isn't used in rating anymore. I'm like, well, yes and no, because if you still live in the middle of, I don't know if I can say this, but BFE, way out in the...
You can say whatever you want. As long as you... This
No,
is
what
an
does it
adult
stand
show.
for? Say it.
Yeah, don't do the acronym, just say it. No. So, if you live way out and you're like, yeah, I drive 25 minutes to the grocery store or to civilization, like, that's great. You probably have a great view, but you also have a ton of probably, like, let's say you're down past Lone Pine. You've got a ton of trees, high wildfire area, and yeah, I mean that's going to be taken into
And
consideration.
out of the fire department zone too. That's always where you'll see the insurance increase.
Katie's on to something, so Katie knows more than she leads on. So
Oftentimes. I just look dumb.
If the mortgage business doesn't work out for you, you've got a future in insurance.
she's like, I just no. So PC class, it's what we use more commonly, and so you can be a PC 2 in downtown Bend, which still fairly rare.
What's
but
PC stand for?
PC 3, PC 9, PC 10.
Politically correct.
Politically correct. No, protection class. So your protection class is that distance. Oftentimes it's strictly measured distanced to a fire station. And so the other thing to think about, alfalfa, is your fire station manned 24/7 or is it voluntary?
Our fire station is getting more funding. It's
Okay.
not quite 24/7, but they are there. I see vehicles there all the time. In fact, I can see them from my back door. I can see the fire station from our back door.
Oh, you're PC 1. I'm just kidding.
So I bet you though, because he's alfalfa and because it's not 100% manned, it's not a true. I don't want to say that. I got some alfalfa fire department, listening. No, but it's not staffed fully 100%
Right.
of the time. With that, and with it being volunteer firefighters, it's like they just don't count it. It's
I grew
crazy.
up in Welch's, and
Oh,
we have
okay.
a volunteer fire department up there.
So they just
Never
don't
stopped.
count it at all.
They count it, but how it works is they'll take it into consideration, sure, but no, I mean essentially, yeah, it's like they don't count it, and so they have to map to the nearest 100% manned. So his would probably be Bend, would be my guess,
Yep.
East Bend.
Yep, off of Hamby.
It's for sale. Just kidding.
Oh, I was like, really?
But my,
his
my
house
insurance is
or-
actually incredibly cheap because
you
we
go.
have tremendous defensible space.
You
right?
do.
Yep.
You
We're not growing grass. We're growing lavender, which actually is not insurable because it is so flammable. We learned that lavender is not an insurable plant
Interesting.
because it is so stinking flammable.
Interesting.
I know.
I've never
Go
thought
figure.
of insuring plants, but
Well,
Interesting.
speaking of burning one down.
yeah.
She's back.
Wow. It smells like soap in here.
Burnt soap.
What are the main issues that you get right now or that come up?
It's definitely the defendable space.
Defendable space.
And then just these properties that are absolutely gorgeous. I would say probably the number one zip code, and this was part of that fire mapping. It was based off zip codes. So that crayon Crayola artwork we saw, it was a lot of it was off zip codes. So South Bend is going to be red, But then, like you said, there'd be a property, and right next to that property, it's green, or whatever. It's the defendable space, but then like Sisters area, as you're going out towards Sisters, it is awful with this, but they have these $2 million+ homes that are absolutely. I think you called me on one of them actually. That was a little
south, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Jake had one that was in Sisters, and it was the most gorgeous home, all this acreage, but it is out off of like Forest Service Road 32, and you just have to go all the way down and around, and no wonder the PC class was, because to get a fire truck down there, well, quite frankly, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And so this $3 million, so the higher the value of the home and the harder it is to access, the more they're going to rate for it. And so, but with that State Bill 82, kind of going back to that, they will not allow you, like a carrier, to non-renew or non-rate. So these carriers are getting really clever, right? So they're not saying, oh, we won't write you because of your defendable space, or we won't write you because of the fire score you're in. We'll rate you for it, but we have to offer it, but the rate they're offering is insane. I had one in Sisters. It was that one specifically. They wanted, it was like $8,800 a year or something like that for the home insurance. And I was like, oh my good God. Randy, does that work for his DTI?
Absolutely not.
No.
I mean, I had one out in Rough and Ready, California, and it was,
California's a tough one.
It's
tough
insane
one right now.
The coverage. I mean, 8,800 is probably not far off on average.
For
homes down there, and they would have like a full maintenance for roads they had a specific fire department road that was just straight through the backyards basically of everyone, and they would all do shared maintenance to just put the space away. A question though that I had, so for mortgage lenders, when we have an underwriter say this is the coverage, or this is the not coverage, but this is what it is, right? We
Replacement
can say,
cost?
No, that's not what I'm getting to.
Okay.
But she's shut up.
We can battle back. Let me think.
Can I cut you off one more time?
We can battle back and say, okay, but our guidelines say this, and so we can discuss with our underwriters on that. So with dispensable space, is that something that you can say, here's proof of the defensible space, and then maybe change ratings or change anything else? Can you go back and forth on that?
Yeah.
Is it common? Yeah.
So there are rate adjustments so with me focusing on ag, a lot of your property and casualty agents locally in Bend, I pride myself on kind of being probably one of the only ones I've heard of that says, I love writing rural properties. Everyone else is like, what the heck? Why would you do that to yourself? But yeah, I like the challenge. And rural properties also come with other exposures. So like lavender, and things like that, where people are like, oh, I'm growing alfalfa, or hey, I'm doing custom haying, where they're basically contracting someone to come in and do the haying for them on their property. So focusing on ag has always just been something I really like to do around here. And I think it's a much needed, kind of niche there, because a lot of these farms, like let's look at Randy's, for example, beautiful property has, you have a farm essentially, and with having that, there is a lot of exposure that isn't being properly rated for or properly accounted for. And a lot of these property owners are like, oh yeah, well, my agent said they can't do it, so I just went with a regular home policy, but we're good. Meanwhile, they've got, hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment. They're trimming their trees that they're harvesting, like all this, and I'm like, whoa, you're way underinsured.
And not to stereotype, but I do feel like ag is the culture of like, oh, it's just the guy that I've always used, and they said
correct.
No. So.
Yeah, I'm not gonna shop. Yeah, he's my guy, right?
Yeah.
I think to answer your question though, yes, I can go back and say, hey, underwriter, X, let's talk about this. Like, they did tell me they have a fire suppression system, or hey, they get inspected by the fire department every year, or hey, it's not 100% manned, but they've got extra funding, and here's what. So I would say that's probably the only thing saving us in a lot of situations. And we do have what's called rate adjustments in the ag world, not on the regular side,
Oh, interesting.
the regular property side. So if you have a property that's even looks like it could be a farm. Sometimes we'll go through a farm product just to ensure that we're getting them the best possible rate, and then setting them up for future endeavors that they might do on their property, knowing that they've got 16 outbuildings, stalls, things like that they can
Interesting.
potentially evolve.
So let's say that I'm in California, which I'm not, but let's say that I am.
Okay.
And I just found out that my insurance carrier is not going to renew my insurance because I'm at high risk, or for whatever reason, they're not going to rewrite my policy. What should I do?
Yeah. Call your agent first. Have that conversation. Katie just spoke to it. They should be able to, have the frank conversation with underwriting. Now, if you've had a loss, like you had a wildfire run through your property, probably not going to renew. That's a tougher conversation to have. But if they're just readjusting rate based off of the zip code, State Bill 82 says they can't do that, right? So that's protecting you there. But if there's really not a solid, I definitely had a big loss last year, I get it, then have the conversation first. Second, find yourself a broker, an independent agent. And you spoke to that, Randy, about,
Right.
Country Financial is one of them as well. Amazing company. They do great when they do great. That's the best way I can put it. State Farm, same thing. Farmers, same thing. But find yourself a broker that can shop markets and several different markets.
That almost smells like shameless self-promotion.
Well, okay, wait.
That's okay.
There's so many. There are
Did
so
Greg
many
tell you
brokers.
the one rule that we have on Truth in Lending? You didn't tell her the one rule?
I didn't.
Oh,
That's
my
okay.
gosh.
That's fine. You're fine.
Yeah.
But ignorance is not a defense. I just want you to know.
No, but really, find yourself a broker. I mean, that's the best thing, and it can be myself, but it can also be any of the other brokers in town that they can offer several products.
Okay.
I'm
Davidson.
curious how much you can speak to force-placed insurance. So when lenders, of course, if you don't continue to make your insurance bill, or if the servicer doesn't make it, then the lender is going to force place that insurance. So in this situation, I think that's going to be pretty astronomical, but
Yeah,
what does it look like?
yeah. Actually, I'm interested to know the trend that ends up, or how that plays out, because yes, normally, like you think auto insurance, it is astronomical. And then they take interest, then you're paying interest on that, and all of this, it's wrapped into your loan. However, it may be less one day, strictly, and as wild as that sounds, but it's not ever in your best interest, because it's literally coverage for the bank to ensure that their investment is covered. So it has no protection for you. There's no liability coverage if someone slips and falls on your property. There's no personal property coverage. There's no medical payments. There's no loss of use. There's no replacement cost of the property. It is literally to say, okay, bank has X dollar amount, left on this loan. That's what they're insuring it for. So it's never going to be beneficial for the owner. It really is to cover the buns of the bank.
Cover the buns.
Cover the buns.
Here's a total question from left field. Do you just do like property and auto insurance, or do you do other insurances as well?
Yeah, so we're a full brokerage. I'm
No, that's okay. I'm curious because if I wanted to, maybe I wanted to, insure these. I wanted to insure my guns.
Yeah. He's pointing
could I
to
do
his
that?
muscles, folks.
Watch it on YouTube so you can also see his Kansas City Chiefs.
That's right.
It is we are a brokerage that full service, in sense of that, where we auto, home, any of your personal assets, but then we also have a commercial department and a health and benefits department as well.
Okay. Wow. All things insurance.
So you can literally
insure my
insure your
I
guns
can
I will
insure
insure
my
Randy.
guns.
Yes.
Wow.
as a whole.
What advice do you have for homeowners to stay up to date?
Yeah, when you're looking to buy a property, and Greg's gonna hit me here. No, when you're looking to buy a property, just be thinking about those things. I mean, it's something else to consider, which long list of things to consider. But just like shopping for a car, I love when clients call me and say, "Hey, can you quote this car? I'm looking at it this afternoon. I really like it. I'm probably gonna buy it, but I want to know what it's gonna cost me." given now, I'm also the type of person, like, if I really want something, I'm going to get it and deal with the cost of the insurance later.
True red-blooded American right there.
But I mean, it's not a bad idea. I can't tell you this last year how many real estate agents have called and said, hey, we're halfway through a transaction. We cannot find someone to insure this hand-hewn log cabin in Deep Sisters, on 400 acres. I'm like, okay, let me get to work. But those are the things. Be proactive as a lender. Be proactive. Ask for that binder early on. I'd rather that any day of getting the binder a month before closing and then have to change the effective date. I used to not love that. Now I'm like, I'd rather that, knowing that the coverage is secure and that I'm not going to be the reason the closing is held up. As a real estate agent, the second your client shows interest and you want to write a contract, just send the address to me and just say, hey, Karmen, like, do you have a market for this? Yeah, we do. Or, hey, wow, this one's going to be tough. It's going to take me a little time. Thanks for sending it early. So I would say that. The other thing is think about how you can be proactive in defendable space. Like, look at the brush. Like, don't have trees growing into the home or brush growing on the side of the home, things like that. So defendable space, and then just, do you have a fire suppression system in place? Have you had the fire department come out and they'll do for free, like a turnaround and make sure, and then they can declare that it's defendable, right? And they can get in.
I have a garden hose. Does that count as a fire suppression system?
How long is it? No, I'm just kidding.
So, you know what I would like to talk about, and this is not on the script, but we're going to put it on here anyways.
Here we go.
Is my pet peeves with insurance. Now, I was a loan processor.
Bring it.
I was a loan processor for 15 years before I got into sales.
Okay.
And you had mentioned something that it was a little triggering for me.
Oh, boy.
When you said changing the effective date. Oh, man. There are a couple of insurance companies out there who will remain nameless that
3 business days, 2 weeks.
if you make the change, well, I've got to rewrite the whole policy. Their numbers are probably going to change. It's it's a real inconvenience. And I used to run into I actually still run into that now.
Yeah.
But you're saying that you would rather
I'm like
someone
I'm just like looking
you'd
at
rather
them.
get it right.
I've ran into you know what, those are some of my best friends, Randy, those people that say that, because what happens is then
I'll give you their names after the show.
Because then Randy calls me and says, hey, this agent over at blank is telling me it's 3 business days and the rate's probably going to go up and blah, blah, blah. I end up getting that policy because I can do it in an hour, and then it's boom. If you want to change the effective date, great. Like, we also have what's called binding authority. So we can, with most of our carriers, we can make that change in-house, or give you an in-house binder, so that you can move on with your life. And
that is one thing I love about brokers.
Yeah.
I have another pet peeve.
Oh, boy.
Oh, I've got a list. And they're just all
He's
coming
like,
to me
my
now.
14 speeding tickets, and my rate keeps going up. No.
I haven't even so much been pulled over in 19 years. Can you believe that?
Today is going to be the day because you said that. Yeah.
Because I said that. That's all right. So another pet peeve of mine is when the RCE, or the replacement cost estimator, when it's held hostage. Now, there are a couple of national companies that do really good commercials, and I love their commercials. They're going to remain nameless, but they hold those RCEs hostage.
They won't ever
What
give
does
them
that
to the
mean?
lender,
It-
which
Oh, I just heard about this, where they just won't give you the breakdown, the cost guide summary.
Yeah, because a lot of times the replacement cost will not be what we need for coverage, right?
Correct.
So we have to. So when we have an
to show
appraisal,
proof. Yeah,
right? When
yeah.
we have an appraisal on a property, there's going to be the breakdown that shows the total estimate cost of new. And if we don't have that, or guaranteed in the verbiage, guaranteed replacement cost, then we have to get the RCE
Sure.
to prove that this is the value that they came up with it, because they will lean more on the RCE than they will on the appraisal itself.
Yeah.
Insurance companies, if you're listening out there, please stop holding the RCE hostage. It is not top secret information.
and
It's
they
not.
will only
It
send it
honestly
to the
helps.
client. Yeah, they'll
Yeah.
only send it to the client, and then the client's like, I don't know why I got this, and they give no guidance and saying, hey, your lender's asking for this. Can you please forward it to them?
We sent it via carrier pigeon.
Yeah. It's like, where did it go?
Yeah, it's not something we hold. It's, from what I understand, and you guys can correct me, this could be an educational moment for me. Usually it's, hey, we want to insure the home at significantly lower than they're buying the home for. We saw it more in like 2020 when it was inflated, but it's justification, right? That we are only insuring it to the value of the replacement or what it would cost to repair or replace.
Right.
So you guys don't really care. You just want to make sure that it matches what we insured it for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, that's how I've understood it. Okay. All right. I won't start holding it hostage. Promise.
Greg, have you got
Awesome.
anything else?
Yeah,
New way
I
to
think
piss
that's
off
about
the
everything
random.
I've got. All the questions I've got.
No pet peeves?
No pet peeves for me.
Gosh, you're just so
He's
dang
my
happy
client.
and
He's so
go-lucky
happy.
and full of joy.
Smile all the time.
That's why it's so smoky in here. Well, Karmen, thank you for coming on. I feel like I learned a ton about insurance that I didn't know before.
Yeah.
I will
Especially
do a
related to
shameless
fire.
plug for you. So Karmen Warner is it Davidson Insurance Agency? That's right. Well, thank you again so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it, and
Thanks for having me.
you get a nice round of applause.
Love it.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, let's get to the news.
Here we are.
Newsday.
News hour.
Yeah. All right. According to CNBC, homeowners say roughly 5% rates are the magic number to move on.
You're going to be waiting a while.
I know. I think 6% is going to make a lot of people move.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do people know? Also, from our friends at CNBC, home prices may be on the verge of cooling off. While prices are up 2.3% year over year from last July, the monthly gain is below historical averages. I've sort of felt that we're seeing a little bit of a cooling trend.
It's
Some may
definitely-
call it stabilization, but I think it is actually cooling.
Stabilization.
Yes.
Student loan interest has resumed. That is all.
Fed Governor Christopher Waller says the job market is beginning to cool as well, which could halt a rate hike by the Fed later this month. I don't believe it.
Oh. I might have heard this a little bit earlier, but student loan interest has resumed. Katie, did you say that?
I
Is that
think
you?
I did mention that. I
Okay.
think that people just really need to remember that is back.
We appreciate you being thorough
Of course.
and repetitive. Really enjoy that. PMI data came out today. It was much cooler. I'm sorry. It was much hotter than expected, causing bonds to sell off and rates to go up. I stole your line, Katie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that about?
It was actually a really big miss. So, yeah, when the Fed meets in a couple of weeks and we hear that rates go up by 0.25%, don't be shocked. Speaking of rates, slightly down from last week's show, but I don't think that's going to last long. Still hovering around an average rate of 7.25%. Whoa.
Oof.
Yeah. Don't forget, you can watch us on YouTube. Find us at Truth and Lending Podcast on Instagram.
Give us some feedback.
Yeah, give us some
us know.
feedback.
Oh,
And
talk
thanks
to us.
again, Karmen, for joining us
Carmen, it was
today.
so
Thank
fun
you,
having
Carmen.
you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. I'm gonna write you an email with more of my pet peeves.
I'll be cleaning the coffee off my body.
That is a great way to end the show. I'm gonna clean the coffee off of my body too.